Well, hello, it's Nate, and it's Friday morning, and we have a treat. Our speaker that came and joined us last night at an event is able to spend a moment with us, and so we thought we would ask him some questions. So the first question I have for you, Dave, is what is the big takeaway that business owners should have from the event that we did last night?
Well, Nate, there's a lot of stuff we covered last night, so to boil it down to one thing is difficult. But I think the big thing that companies are missing right now is the ability to detect what's going on in their computing environment. So, I mean, there's a lot of emphasis on, well, we have firewalls and we have antivirus software and all this stuff, but people are still getting in. The question I always ask is, can you detect if someone breaks in? And if they do break in, do you have a response to that? Do you have a way to stop that? And that really is what's missing in huge companies as well as little companies, and even down to the individual at home. And they just need to figure out a way to get that in.
Are small businesses able to afford this sort of thing?
That is the big question. It's difficult for big companies to afford all this stuff and all this technology, and it gets expensive. I just think there's a number of things that can be done in the SMB market. I would probably start out with just some of the training of users and that kind of thing, and we probably should talk about that a little bit more later. But I think the place I'd focus right now is I know, for instance, you have an offering that I was looking at. What do you call it? Active IT? Okay, yeah, Active IT. Okay, that's a, I guess I call that a managed security offering. I think that's where the market needs to go. If like yours, focus on building a way to manage that specifically for the SMB market. A lot of this has been done in the enterprise market already. If you look at companies like SunGuard and the old ComDisco, they did a lot of this kind of thing, but it was very expensive and unaffordable for the mid-market and the small market. They catered to very large banks. A lot of this stuff was outsourced. It has been for forever. But there's no reason why we can't bring it down to the SMB market and provide that same kind of enterprise level support simply by putting the infrastructure here in one building and spreading it out among many, many small clients. And it's built specifically for the SMB market so that it becomes an affordable solution. I think that's perfect. I would urge you to continue to build that out and really be looking at the SMB security needs, as I know you are, because to me that's the answer. That's the way to go.
Now, what about organizations that have an IT person on staff or an IT department?
Okay, yeah, I do see. I see mid-market and even some smaller companies that are maybe have a part-time IT person. They might have one full-time. If they're a little bit bigger, they might have 2 or 3 people, maybe 2, but usually not 3. And I think that's good. There's a need for someone to be watching if they can have someone on site. It certainly helps out, but it can be expensive, and the expense comes in when you try to get somebody who has enough credentials to manage a computing environment, but it's only one person. And then you start to move in the security space, and what I'm finding is security is a specialty. You have system administrators, you have people who are storage administrators, you have people who are application administrators, you have help desk people, you have security people. I mean, there's all different kinds of people. There's a person who focuses on building a house, and then there's a person who just focuses on plumbing, and then there's a person who somewhere just focuses on the well system, and you start to get down to this very focused skill set. Security is like that. You can't just sort of be in security. You've got to be in security. That means you're going to security training classes, you're reading about security, you're studying security, you're talking to security people all the time. How does anybody keep up with all that stuff and do system administration, help desk calls, PC implementation? I mean, you're asking a lot. And then I will add this. Let's say you do take somebody who's really interested in security and you send them to all that training, and you have 10 people or 20 people in your company. Well, guess what? When that person gets all those skills, they're going to be worth a lot of money, and they're going to know it, and they're going to leave. So it's kind of like an SMB person having their own payroll people and their own accountants and their own legal staff, and you know, it just doesn't make sense. You just find a quality organization. I do it too. I run a small business, and I just farm that stuff out to the experts. You're an expert in this, you're an expert in that. That's the way to do it.
What about the private cloud? Because one of the things that we've been considering doing is building an offering of a private cloud that provides a secure environment for our clients.
Okay, so that makes a little more sense to me, right? In fact, so now the question is, can I be more secure than Google? No, I can't. However, Google's such a big target that they're going to be attacked, right? The chances of me being a targeted attack are not that likely. However, the chances of me being attacked through these mass bot attacks are very high. I mean, the likelihood is like 100%. So they're going to get in. Now, if I move to a private cloud situation like you, now I've got a much smaller target. It's not one that people in China and Russia are going to know about. So I'm still going to be hit with these automated attacks. However, there's going to be people who understand security managing it. So this, I think, is a good solution. This puts a solid, affordable security framework in place that's constantly monitored, 7 by 24, but yet it's not a monstrous target that has all kinds of hospitals and government data and all kinds of other things that people that may want. They're not going to know it's there. I think it's a good move. I would do it.
You know, that brings up another question. We do a lot of assessing for our clients, giving them information about what their risk is. When we do that sort of thing, what do you think are the most critical elements of the assessment process?
Okay, yeah, first of all, I think assessments are critical, and I don't see a lot of them being done in the SMB market. So I know that the folks that attended the dinner last night, you offered this complimentary assessment. I think that is wonderful. That is what business leaders need, because in the SMB market, it's tough to go out and hire somebody. However, just having an assessment by itself without putting some thought into it is not going to be that valuable. So there are two things. One of the things I saw in your assessment process already, which I'm very happy to see, and that is that people are out there measuring or are looking for vulnerabilities. Where can I break in? All right, well, that's somewhat useful. But there's very little view of measuring the likelihood that an event will actually take place. That makes it almost useless. So if you can bring your clients, and that's what I see in your assessment, saw that graph in there, that's perfect, right? It gives me a sense of likelihood. If the likelihood's low, I don't need to really do much about it. But if there's a high likelihood on something or something's been compromised, then it needs to be addressed. So that'd be the first thing. If a measurement of risk is really understanding the data value and the likelihood of exposure. That's needed. Number two is the SMB market tends to, or not anybody on the business side tends to view this as a purely technical process. And so I see business owners and executives kind of withdrawing themselves from the process and saying, work with my IT person, or if they don't have one, work with my office manager. But who knows the value of that data? Who understands the impact of that data loss to the organization? And who better understands what kinds of threats that could come from somebody involved in some kind of legal dealings or a merger and acquisition or some kind of competitive deal or something that would make someone want that data? It is the asset owner, I call it, the person who is responsible and liable for that company and that information. That person has to be involved. And with that input, now I can start to understand the value of data and start to look at the relevant threats so that I can measure that likelihood. And that's missing. So I know that you had business owners at that meeting, and I would urge you, and I would urge them you've got to get involved in the assessment process. Otherwise, it's not going to be valuable to that organization. What a great event it really was. So what you've done really is a great service to this community.
Well, super. And dessert's the most important part. I always start there first. So I'm glad you got some. Thanks again for joining us.